Hello, I'm Dale Ander, and I'm a member of the Control Center Development and Support Teams. Welcome to a series of videos covering the key capabilities of IBM Sterling Control Center. If you don't know, Control Center is a tool that can be used to track key actions and activities occurring across your B2B and file transfer infrastructure. And in this video, I'm going to show you how to use something called an SLC. Specifically, I'm going to show you how you can use an SLC to ensure that something going into a mailbox is processed within 15 minutes. So let's get started. If you don't know, SLCs, otherwise known as service level criteria, they're used to generate events about things that did not occur. If Control Center is monitoring for processes and generating events when they run, and you want to know, well, what about when my process doesn't run? What about when my file transfer doesn't occur by 5 o'clock on Friday? Or, in this case, what happens if a file going into a mailbox isn't processed within 15 minutes? Control Center has this rule capability that when events occur, you can have actions associated with those rules, and those actions can cause you to be notified in some way, whether it's an email or an SNMP trap or more. Generate an alert, for example. But when events don't occur, there won't be anything to trigger your rules. Well, that's where SLCs come in. SLCs can be programmed, if you will, to describe what is supposed to occur, and then the SLC service within Control Center takes all these SLCs that you've coded and watches to ensure that what you've coded occurs when you said it would occur, or that within the time frame that you specified, and will generate events if that does not happen. And then if you write rules to watch for those events, you can have actions associated with those rules to allow you to be notified in the way that you choose. So in this example, I'm going to show you how to create a workflow SLC that ensures something that goes into a mailbox is processed within an arbitrary amount of time, in this case, 15 minutes. If you want to know more about SLCs or service level criteria, there's quite a bit of information in our documentation, and there's even a couple of white papers. There's also some videos. You can go to YouTube, and there's some videos you can look where this one will just tell you about SLCs in general, SLC 101. You can see how to create SLC schedules. Here's a nice video that shows you how to build an SLC, a workflow SLC, to ensure that an important file transfer occurs by, I think, 5 o'clock on Fridays. And in this one, I go through the whole web console to show you how to not only create the schedules, but create the SLC and the rules to watch for the SLC events. This one shows how to create what's called an SLC debug report. And this one, for people that are motivated to do so, this will teach you how to debug your own SLCs. So in this example, we're going to show how to create an SLC that ensures a file that arrived in a mailbox is processed within 15 minutes. And to do that, we'll need to create what's called a duration schedule as opposed to a calendar schedule. A duration schedule is where you could set a minimum and a maximum amount of time for something that's supposed to occur. We'll have to create a 2 milestone workflow SLC. And know that there are several types of SLCs. There's standard, wildcard, even simple, but we're going to use a workflow SLC. And you'll have to create some rules. So I'll show you the rules that need to be created to ensure that when our Workflow SLC generates the did not occur kind of events, that we'll be notified. So first, we need to create a schedule. And know that I've created all of these up front, so I just went into update so I could show you what these artifacts or these objects look like. I created a schedule called duration 0 to 15 minutes. I highly recommend you use well-named schedules so you can know when you can reuse them for other SLCs. And in this case, I set my minimum duration to 0 hours, 0 minutes, 0 seconds, and I set my maximum duration to 0 hours, 15 minutes, and 0 seconds. Normally, unless you care about something that doesn't take long enough, always set your minimum duration to 0. Next, we'll need to create our 2 milestone workflow SLC. The first milestone will be triggered, if you will, when the file arrives in the mailbox, and the second milestone is when that file that arrived has been processed. And when both of them occur within our duration, things are great, but when they don't, we want to be notified. So in this SLC that I've named Mailbox Item Processed, you can see the name there, I've got monitor tolerances set to 0 for the start, 0 for the end. That's pretty typical of what you'll use for any kind of SLC you create. I've made sure that it's enabled. This is very important. Generate notification if event has not occurred. Without that, this SLC will be worthless to you. And I always recommend to suppress the milestone messages. So this is the general screen when you're creating your SLC. Now I've skipped over the notes and the data visibility groups. This is just something you could use to add more descriptive comments to the SLC if you need to. And I'm not using data visibility groups, so I've skipped over that. And now I need to specify the schedule for this SLC. And as you can see, I've already done that. It's right here under selected schedules, duration 0 to 15 minutes. Next, we're going to create the SLC parameters. We're going to set those values. Since I've suppressed SLC messages, I mean SLC milestone messages, this doesn't really matter. I've set my concurrence count to 999. That way, up to 999 concurrent files could be put into a mailbox, and Control Center's SLC service would be able to ensure that they all occur within 15 minutes. Now, I've looked at the events, the XML behind those events, and I know that in Milestone 1, the expr.message name value is going to match the expr.message name in the second milestone, the events associated with the processing of the file that arrived in the milestone. And to tie these two milestones together, the common value is this expr.message name. It's the name of the file that went into the mailbox. So that's why I have it set as my correlator source. Very important. No Jeopardy list, not important. No fire once list. Now we need to create our 2 milestones. And in this SLC, I've named one of them arrival. That watches for when the file goes into the mailbox and actually starts the SLC timer, the 15-minute timer because of that schedule. And the other milestone is called process. And notice that I've made these also have an internal schedule. I've skipped over that when I'm showing you the parameters for this milestone, but It's 0 to 5 minutes. It's pretty darn arbitrary. Remember, I'm suppressing milestone messages, so if it exceeds it, it doesn't matter. As long as it takes less than 15 minutes, and it sure should. Here are the key parameters for milestone 1, the arrival milestone. I have the SI mailbox path. It's set to /*/inbox. I've used a wildcard operator, so this means any file arriving in any partner's inbox will match this one. I put destination file of asterisk. That makes this a step-based milestone, which is important. And remember, we're putting something into the mailbox, so I've used the variable called si.isPut, and it's true because it's a put. It went into the mailbox. And for any server, any monitored server, it doesn't really matter. And if you want to know how did I know what to use here, I used a database events report to look at the events. That's how I ascertained what the correlator should be between the milestones. I looked at the XML representation of the events associated with a file arriving in a mailbox, and I looked at the events associated with the process of processing that file that went into the mailbox, and that's how I came up with these values to use. And you'll want to do something similar. Now, I've set the correlator source at the workflow level because I could. So I don't want to set one here on the milestone level. If the event variable that had the common value between the two milestones was different, then I couldn't use the correlator source at the workflow level. I would have had to have used the correlator source at the milestone level, and I would have specified two different variables, but that's not the case here. Now, for the second milestone, which I've named process, to be honest, the quickest thing for me to do for this was to duplicate the arrival milestone and then modify it for this one. So as you can see, it's got the SI mailbox path, it's got destination file, it's got si.isPut, only this time it's false because it was a get, actually. It was pulling it out of the mailbox, which is how I would know it was processed, and the server is still asterisk. The one other thing I noticed by looking at that database events report is the value for the si.mailbox path, I needed to put an ending slash. Why? I'm not sure, but that's what the evidence showed I needed to do in order for this to match the event values. So you have to be very careful when you're setting these and using the database events report to actually see what is in the events that you want to trigger your milestone is a good way to figure out what should go here. Now, I need to create the two rules to watch for the did not occur events associated with this workflow. One of the rules is going to watch for this CSLC 043E event, which means did not end by DMAX. In other words, didn't end within the 15 minutes. And the other rule is just a catch-all. It's not going to do anything, but it's going to ensure that other events associated with this SLC don't trigger any other rules inadvertently. So my first rule, it's named mailbox item process -1. And its parameters are SLC name, and it's the name of our SLC. It's got message ID, and it's that CSLC 043E, did not end by DMAX. And I've included event type is SLC notification, and that's it. And action-wise, I want it to generate a SEV1 alert. So I've used my primary action of alert 1. So that's the first rule I had to create. This one watches for the did not occur event. The other rule, the second rule, which I've named mailbox item process -2, This is the catch-all rule. So to be honest again, all I did is I duplicated that first rule and I removed the message ID that it watched for. I left the SLC name, I left the event type, and I changed the action to just be no operation. So when this rule is triggered, it won't do anything. And know that the order matters for these rules. I needed to make sure that the rule that watches for the did not occur event, the CSLC 043E did not end by Dmax, is higher priority than the second rule, which catches all the other events associated with that SLC. It's not important that these be the top priority rules, but it's critical that they're more important, higher priority, in other words, than any of the generic rules that you have. Rules that watch for SLC events but don't specify an SLC name. And I've done that. It's higher than any of them.